I'd like to call on my colleague, Mr. Alastair Taylor, who's going to be giving us an overview of the report. Alastair is an incorporated engineer with the UK Engineering Council. He's also a chartered environmentalist with the UK Society for the Environment. He's an honorary fellow of the Institute of Agricultural Engineering in the UK, and he's also the former CEO of that institute. And as I said, he has been the coordinator and the chief author of this report. Alastair, over to you.
It's an absolute privilege to be with everyone this morning to give you a short overview of the report. The report is 88 pages, and how do I capture 88 pages in just a few PowerPoint slides? Well, that's my challenge, but I'm going to attempt to do that over the next few minutes to share with you the main drives and the main contents of the report which we have written, Agricultural Engineering in Africa, a key driver for transforming agriculture to deliver food security and to support economic prosperity. Before I start, I think I must express my thanks and appreciation to all of those who contributed to this report, whether that was through written evidence or online interviews via Zoom or reports which they had written, which I was able to draw upon. I'm in great debt to a number of people from across the whole of the continent who've helped contribute to this report, to put it together. And it is that passion of those people which is so important in allowing us to produce what we have delivered. We have a report and a call to action. And I want to really stress those words, call to action, because this is our moment to call upon colleagues from across the world to support Agricultural Engineering Africa and to make things happen. But first of all, a little bit about myself. Jeff's already said some of my my provenance in terms of my professional status in the UK and my former work as the Chief Executive of the UK Institution of Agricultural Engineers. But now I'm semi-retired. I'm a freelance agricultural engineer, Agritech specialist. I've been an agricultural engineer over 40 years ago. Worked in education for a big part of my career, and so I have an in-depth knowledge of agricultural engineering, engineering in general, and education and training. And I consider my relationship with the Pan-African Society for Agricultural Engineering and an advocate for their work as something so vitally important, and I'm very proud to be associated with this project. So that's myself, that's a little bit about me. You can read more in the report. Jeff's already said about the Pan-African Society for Agricultural Engineering, or AfroAgEng as we call it, a little bit about our aims and objectives. And I urge you, if you're not aware of the society, to visit their website, to read more, and to get involved and support the Pan-African Society with our ventures to promote this incredibly important industry. But moving on to the report and the call to action. And stressing the point that this is very much driven by the way in which AgEng contributes to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and also Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Now, I'm not African, but I'm very driven by the Africa we want agenda, and I read that and I just think it's such an important thing to be associated with. And it's wonderful to be able to see the way in which agricultural engineering contributes to that. So our report highlights the challenges we face, those harsh facts, those key development challenges which face Africa and also the profession. It looks at the education provision available in agricultural engineering. It highlights the challenges that faces, but also celebrates the best practice. I think that a really important strand coming through here as well is the energies of our young engineers, the entrepreneurs coming through from the next generation and the contribution they make. It also highlights what I call a paradigm shift, which we all need to make to move agricultural engineering forward. And it has 25 recommendations, and these seek to call you to action. They're calls to action, and we want you to read those and take them on board as much as you can. Fundamentally, this is about engaging our people from not just across Africa, but from across the world, of all religions and colours and races and genders, to pull everyone together to promote this discipline of ours. It's about improving our efficiency and improving our production systems and getting more out of what we have available to us from our very precious resources, which are so pushed and pulled by the climate and the pressures on them, we need to do our best to improve the efficiency of those production systems. And fundamentally, it's about securing our food supply in the future. This is so vitally important, and with a growing population in the world and with a growing pressure on resources, that huge challenge which we face is highlighted in our report, and it talks about how we can address that. The challenges we face, well, you know, you're all from Africa, you all understand Africa well as well. You don't need me to point out the details of the challenges we face. You know, the low productivity, the rising population, the shifting demographics, the movement from the rural areas to the cities, the quality of the infrastructure and the impact that has upon getting food around and transportation and moving, as captured in these images here, and also an image there of a combine harvester growing in some weeds and some long grass there, and how all the efforts of the past haven't always borne the fruit which they should, and how we can turn that particular agenda around. I'm not going to dwell upon that. You know what those challenges are. So this is about looking to the future and seeing where we should go with them. We talk in terms of key development challenges, and we talk about something we call the water, food and energy nexus. And Jeff has already shared with you the agricultural engineering nexus, and that diagram there showing agricultural engineering at the heart, the nexus of agricultural production, land and environment, and engineering and technology. We could argue, couldn't we, how big that little triangle should be in the middle. It probably is bigger than that. But, you know, sometimes it's worth reminding ourselves, and those who aren't close to agricultural engineering, that it is very unique in the way it brings together land and animals and plants and the environment with engineering and technology. And I would argue to any one of you, and those of you who are agricultural engineers will agree with me entirely, you know, what is more rewarding, but also what's more misunderstood? But vitally, what is more important in terms of securing food security in the future? So there's a takeaway diagram for you, and just to remind others and remind people about you, around you, of this important role we play in agricultural engineering. We have a job to do to highlight the positive image of agricultural engineers, and we have some incredible advocates and some wonderful people doing fantastic things. We just need more of them, and we need them to be better understood and better promoted and better celebrated to move our industry forward. And it is an exciting time as well. So many innovations coming through, so many incredible things, whether those are robots or the use of solar power and energies and electronics, or the use of modern high-tech service centers to make sure the technology we use is at the top of its game. There is some very, very exciting things coming around today. You only need to look on the likes of YouTube to see, for example, the other day I was looking at a robot picking strawberries. What incredible technology. What's not to like about that? At the same time, I think we need to make sure it is understood that we are a very multidisciplinary genre of engineers, and we adopt what we're calling a systems approach. Of course, we use the word occasionally biosystems engineering. So the word systems really, really important. So there's a call here to our university colleagues to understand that this bringing together of not just engineering and technology, but with the ability to work in teams and to think collaboratively, to bring everything together, and how our education needs to reflect that approach as it's beginning to around the world. And our report goes on to talk about that and talk about the multidisciplinary and systems approach and how that should be harnessed to the benefit of engineers across Africa. Moving on to the report. Now, you won't be able to read this, it's too small, but those of you who will have read the report will have seen the contents of it. Just briefly, it obviously provides an overview and goes to the recommendations right at the start, but it deals in a range of chapters with the harsh facts which face food and security in Africa, some of the key development challenges, something about the profession, how we define that, why it's important, the careers which are available to people working in it, and where it's going in the future. We then look at the Sustainable Development Goals and how agricultural engineering supports those and helps to move those forward. And then we delve into some of the education from across the whole of the continent. And we're not talking of sub-Saharan Africa here. We go right to the north into Morocco and North Africa as well, to draw upon all the work going on around the whole of the continent and best practice in terms of education and what we need to do to move that forward, because education is such a great starting point, isn't it? We move on then to talk about the paradigm shift that needs to take place and the things we need to do to move the industry forward. We support this with a range of appendices which look into how the discipline contributes to the Sustainable Development Goals, how we might go around improving the image of the industry drawn from various Pan-African Society conferences and what our colleagues and friends are saying from around the continent. We dip into some best practice and some emerging technologies from around the continent, including some of those which have been supported and have been winners from the Royal Academy of Engineering Africa Prize Award Scheme, which I do urge you to look at in more detail. I'm a judge for that as well. And it's wonderful to see how often Agritech and agricultural engineering is put forward. And it's great to see the way in which the Royal Academy supports that. I think maybe we'll say more about that presently. We also have some appendices around what's going on around in the different countries around the continent as well, which are helpful. And then we look into some of the new things going on around the world, which could be applied in Africa to help move education forward. So we have an 88-page report, including appendices. It's available electronically at the moment, but we will be publishing some hard copies and circulating those as appropriate when the pandemic allows us to move things around with more ease. So moving on to talk about the report, we have the recommendations in 5 groups, and we use those words, together we can. So together we can raise the profile of the discipline, we can reform and modernize it, we can grow it, we can create new opportunities, and we can sustain that contribution. And the 25 recommendations are themed around those 5 headings. I'm not going to go into them in full detail, but just to give you some headlines. When it comes to raising the profile, this highlights the jobs we have to do here. We have to increase awareness across government, industry, and the general public. We have to celebrate the exciting opportunities, highlight the contribution which we are making, make sure everyone knows. We need to make sure agricultural engineering appears more in the media. We need to identify key partners. We need to identify professional partners and important advocates and get them on board as our friends to shout about our wonderful industry. So we need to commence dialogue, and I urge every one of you to help us to make a noise, be loud, make yourself heard, celebrate what we do, shout it from the rooftops, which is a saying we use here in the UK. So there's a takeaway comment from me, make a noise. When it comes to reforming and modernising, we have a job to do to look at the curriculum in universities and schools. We need to think about how we relate science, technology, engineering and mathematics. We call that STEM here in the UK. I'm sure that's used widely across the rest of the world as well. But we need to relate that to the agenda for food, soil, environmental security. We need to embrace new technological developments across universities. We sometimes find our universities are not dealing with the state-of-the-art technologies, so we need to enhance what the universities are looking at and sharing with their students. It would be great if we had a Pan-African standard for the engineering curriculum, certainly in agricultural engineering. So wherever you go across the continent, you can be assured of a similar content and a similar quality. We need to share our resources and our approaches and attempt to get some sort of continuity across the continent. We need to develop a new generation of leaders, people who can take us forward in the future. And we need to draw from the engineering industry to bring new skills and technologies to educational practice. The industry are crying out for help. They are our friends, they are our advocates, and they are very confident that they can contribute to education to help education be more relevant to the young people coming through education. We need to grow the profession. We need to promote the concept of professionalism. Our professional agricultural engineers. I often sometimes say to myself, would you go to an unqualified doctor? I don't think you would. So therefore, the same argument should be applied to agricultural engineering. We should have the best engineers doing the best job. And we need to engage with government to showcase that role and how professional engineers make a difference. And similarly, identify those advocates and celebrate their work and the contribution they make. And it would be great if we had a central database showcasing the professional status of engineers and academic institutions. But I want you to look at that little picture of those 6 young fellas there. They're our future. Wouldn't it be great if we recruited those guys as agricultural engineers? Oh, what a great photograph it is. Isn't that a wonderful image? When it comes to creating new opportunities, we must link what we do to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and make sure they're supported by agricultural engineers. So our report makes that point. And it also makes the point that we need to make it clear how how the profession touches all of the food chain process, from the moment the seed is planted in the field, right the way through to the moment it appears on the shelves in a supermarket or in a market. We touch all of that process, whether it's pre-harvest or post-harvest. We need to talk about all that. We also need to make sure that the wider engineering profession, whether those are civil engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, water engineers, they all have a contribution to make to agricultural engineering as well. And they must not operate in silos. We must all operate as one central engineering profession. Similarly, we need to collaborate within universities. Sometimes universities themselves operate in isolation with one department not talking to another department. Hey, wouldn't it be great if the biologists and the chemists talk to the engineers? Because that's what agricultural engineers do. So we need to identify what these barriers are and we need to address them. We also need to work with our funding agencies and financial institutions to highlight the role of agricultural engineering. And I'm so delighted that today in the audience, we have people from the banks. You have such a vital, important role to play here and to support and make sure the technology coming through in agricultural engineering is invested in and is put to use across the continent. So it's wonderful to have you on board today. But then having done all these things, we need to sustain it. So we need to work globally with those who develop the machinery and the infrastructure to get them as part of the story. We need to influence the non-government organizations, NGOs, and the charity partners who put their efforts into supporting Africa. But we want that to be better planned and the money to be better spent. Too much in the past, there's been a bit too much of a move towards a quick fix. But we must look for more long-term and sustainable solutions. And the other thing, is my final point in terms of recommendations, and this is a very quick run around those 25 recommendations. We need as a continent to invest in the Pan-African Society of Agricultural Engineers, AfroAgEng. We need to come together and support the society. We need to make sure its approach is consistent. We need to make sure it's there for the long term, with the staff and the resources to make all of this happen. That's such a vitally important thing to do. So my final point, who is our audience? So our audience for our report are these people, governments, whether they're national, regional, or local. Universities and educational providers, not just the universities, but the technical educational providers and schools as well. We're reaching out to the global research and development partners, to the multinational manufacturers and suppliers who work across the world, to the media and to the press outlets to make sure they celebrate what we do, to the financiers, the banks and the funders, and most of all to the people of Africa, and particularly the next generation. They are our future. We want them to come into the industry, to support what we do, to be part of the future and to be part of this exciting industry. So this call to action, 25 recommendations with the background information to support that. Together we can. Together, we can make agricultural engineering a key driver. Together, we can make it transform agriculture. Together, we can make it deliver food security. And together, we can make it support economic prosperity across the whole of Africa. So there is my overview of the report. It's available for download. The website is there. I urge you to download it. I urge you to share the link with all your partners and all those who you think can make a difference.